Hi guys. This one's running a little late today, but I, I'm excited. This is going to be the conclusion of the book, and this is definitely some of the best part of it. So I hope you stuck along this far so you could hear the rest and how it ends. Oh, again, I'm reading "Embraced by the Light" by Betty J Eadie, and um, we'll just begin. My special angel. A year after visiting with the doctor, 6 years after my experience, my sister Dorothy called with an unusual story. She told me about a woman who was expecting a baby that would be put up for adoption. The woman and her husband were alcoholics, and one child had already been removed from them for previous problems. Unfortunately, the family that had taken the first child had too many children and could not accept this one. Because the baby was a Native American, they wanted to keep it in a family of Native American parents, preferably within its own extended family. Dorothy knew that I had been depressed for some time and thought that keeping my hands busy with another baby, this would be my eighth, would help me get back to normal. She said they needed someone to take the baby for a couple of months. I discussed it with Joe and the family, and although I had just registered at community college to begin work on a college degree, I found myself considering it. My daughter, Cheryl, who was expecting a baby, and said that she would come over every day to help me so that she could get used to taking care of an infant. Joe said that he wouldn't mind holding a little one again. Our youngest was 12. I said yes, and by the time the caseworker brought the darling baby girl to our home, I had everything ready for it. We had found the old cradle that we were saving for our grandchildren, and other odds and ends that our own babies had used. I instantly took to her, creating a bond that I knew would be difficult to break. I kept reminding myself that she would be leaving soon, but what my head kept saying, my heart denied. The court was having trouble finding an adoptive home within the family's immediate family, or the child's immediate family. 2 months passed. My daughter had a baby boy, and I visited them as often as possible, taking my foster daughter with me. She was cheerful, bright, and always wanted hugs. When she felt ill or wanted comfort, she dug her nose into my neck and let my breath fall on her face. This often quieted her when nothing else would. Of course, the whole family loved her. In the mornings, our 12 and 14-year-old boys would steal her out of her crib and take her into the family room to play games with her. She began to walk at 10 months, and her olive complexion was as healthy and glowing as any baby's. I smoothed her down every morning with lotion until her skin was as soft as silk, and throughout the day I loved to smell it on her. My love for her deepened over the months, and soon I forgot that she wasn't mine. She was 10.5 months old when the caseworker called to tell me that they had found relatives for her in another state. The adoptive parents would be by in a few days to pick her up. I was stunned. Joe and I had signed an agreement saying that we would not attempt adoption, and now I was desperate. We had known all along she couldn't be ours, but now I was in the worst agony a mother can know. I was about to lose my child. I packed her clothing in a misty cloud of numbness. People spoke to me, but I did not hear them. Questions raced through my mind, seeking answers not to be found. I had never believed that I would become so emotionally attached, so much in love. How had I let it happen? Where was my strength to let go? When the new parents drove up, I carried her to the car. At first she thought that we were going somewhere, and she happily nuzzled me and said bye-bye to the rest of our family. They were in the same stupor that enveloped me. The adoptive parents waited in the car and didn't say anything. I was grateful for that. No one could have said anything to give me comfort then. When the new mother reached for my baby, my heart slid up and tightened around my throat. I wanted to run with the baby, run and never stop, but my legs wouldn't move. They were weak and shaking. The baby realized that she was being taken away from me and began to scream. My heart broke. As the car drove off, I stood immobile. The vision of my precious little girl crying, with hands outstretched, reaching for me, burnt into my soul. I broke down and ran into the house, the image searing me. It was to torment me for months to come. Everything in the house reminded me of her. The piano where she loved to sit and pretend that she was Mommy. The playpen filled with toys in the crib with her empty bottle in it. And most of all, the stillness. After 3 months, I could bear it no more, and I began praying to the Lord to return her to me. The memories were too deep, too fresh, and too inconsolable. Nobody spoke of her, but I knew the entire family was in pain. We all needed her. Then one night, after my spirit had been broken down by the realization that she wasn't returning, I prayed for the family that had her. I asked our Father in heaven to bless them so that they can make her happy. I asked him to bless her, that she could accept her new surroundings and find peace of mind and joy. I prayed with all my heart for that family and their precious little girl. Then, feeling at last that it was in the Lord's hands, I finally drifted off to sleep. That night, I was awakened by a messenger who stood by my bed. I understood that he had come from the spirit world. He said that the situation with my baby was not right, that she would be returned to me. He said that I would receive a phone call in which the caller would say, "I have good news, and I have bad news." I did not sleep for the rest of the night. For the next 2 weeks, I would not leave the house. Every time the phone rang, I jumped for it, waiting for that special call. I told Dorothy about the messenger, but I couldn't bring myself to tell the rest of the family, not even Joe. I felt like I'd already tried their patience enough. Even Dorothy was wondering about me. The phone rang early one morning, and I heard the voice plainly say, "Betty, this is Ellen. I have some good news, and I have some bad news." I sat up in the bed and screamed, Wait a minute. I had been asleep and thought I was dreaming. I crawled out of bed and looked in the mirror to make sure I was awake, and then I grabbed the phone and said, "Okay, I'm listening." My heart was pounding so hard that it pulsed against my eardrums. The voice continued, explaining that my baby was in a hospital. She wouldn't adjust to the new family, Ellen said, and she kept crying. "You were her mommy for 10 months, and she's been looking for you." Ellen went on to explain that as the baby cried, tempers rose, and one night, in a drunken rage, the parents beat her and threw her down a flight of stairs. The baby had then been taken to a hospital and abandoned, where she lay critically ill for 2 weeks. She was not responding to treatment, and the doctors recognized that in her emotional state she might never recover. Sorry. Finally, Ellen said, "Betty, our last hope is you. We know we're asking a lot, but could you please take her back for a while, at least until she gets better?" I felt faint, and my breath came in gasps. "Can I call you right back?" I asked. Then I hung up the phone. It was 7:30, and Joe had already gone to work. I ran to the stairs and screamed for the kids. I told them I had wonderful news, but then I couldn't get it out. My throat tightened. The words would not pass through my lips. The children followed me to the phone and listened as I called Joe and tried to tell him what had happened. He said he'd be home right away. His voice was calmer than mine, and that comforted me. I was starting to feel relieved a little, and I realized that I hadn't given Ellen an answer. In my excitement, I had practically hung up on her. I redialed her number. Then I became panicky that I had misunderstood her. What if everything had been a mistake? She answered, and I asked her to repeat everything again, which she did, adding that she was flying to the city where the baby had been abandoned. I told her that I would go with her, but she said it wouldn't be appropriate to wait here. But she had told me where the baby was, and right after she hung up, I dialed the travel agency and made plans to be on the same flight with her.
I called her back and said I was going with her. Reluctantly, she said that she would meet me at the airport. Another caseworker would meet us in the other city, bringing the baby with him. The flight was too long, and as soon as we were let off the plane, I ran into the terminal and began searching through crowds for my baby. Knowing the caseworker was a man, I looked for a single male with a child. I couldn't find them, and I began feeling frantic. I knew exactly what the baby looked like. Why couldn't I find her? Then to one side I spotted them, but the baby in his arms didn't resemble the image in my memories at all. Still, I knew it was her. That's my baby. I heard myself screaming as I ran to them and snatched her out of his arms. The baby was bald, except for touches of hair here and there. Her eyes were swollen, and one eyebrow was cut and bruised. She recognized me immediately and clutched me tightly with both her arms and little legs wrapped tightly around me. What have they done? What have they done? I cried. The caseworker was surprised at the strange crying woman who had pulled the baby from his arms. Ellen came up behind me and explained to him that it was all right. I was the baby's mother. Joe and all 6 children met us at the airport on our return. Their eyes lit up with excitement and filled with tears when they saw the little bundle in my arms. The baby saw them and willingly went to each of them as they reached to hold her, but she stayed with each only briefly, needing to return to me between hugs. She clung to me like her life depended on my existence. For the next few months, she wouldn't let me leave her sight. We became aware of the harm that had been done to her fragile emotions. She wouldn't speak to anybody. She refused to walk, and her face was expressionless. The only time she made a sound was when I left her. Then she cried until I returned. Finally, I wrapped her in a dish towel and tied her to my body so I could get some work done around the house. She and I spent a few months tied together like this. I put her crib next to my bed and retired early each night because she refused to go to sleep without me next to her. At first, her crib was right next to my bed, and I put my hand through the bars and held her hand until she fell asleep. As the months went by, I moved her crib a little further away each night until she was eventually able to sleep on the other side of the room. Joe and I had hired an attorney and began immediate adoption proceedings. We had also taken her to a hospital for an examination to document the abuse she had experienced. We found that besides the obvious cuts and bruises, she had suffered a fractured arm, dehydration, malnourishment, and had sores on her scalp where clumps of her hair had been torn out. Her mental condition could only be guessed at, but her desperate, 1 minute. So sorry. But gets me. Oh my goodness. Okay. The doctor saw her, but her desperate clinging to me and refusal of others showed deep distrust. The doctor saw that her health depended on the continuous stable family life she received with us. The court reviewed the matter and considered all the evidence. The decision was soon in coming. She was ours. Joe wanted to change her name, wanting to give her the most precious name he knew. And even though I objected, the family overruled me. They couldn't miss the similarities in personality and the deep bonding that we had established. She was legally renamed Betty Jean, after me, her new mother. By the time little Betty was 2.5, she had fully recovered both physically and emotionally. She became once again the most darling and playful child in the house, surprising us constantly with her quick sense of humor. One afternoon she ran over to Joe. As an impish smile came to her face, she stood up on the toe of his shoe, threw her other foot up behind her, and balancing like a ballerina, reached up to dig into the pocket of his slacks. A chill ran through me as memories flooded back. Little Betty laughed, and I heard the voice of a little girl years before, a little girl who had kept us company in the hospital room when heaven and earth seemed one. Then I saw and understood more. A vision of a young woman came back to me, a memory of a beautiful and energetic spirit who had once been waiting to come to earth. I remembered her as the young spirit with whom I had shared a bond in a previous time, the one in the spirit world whose loveliness and energy captivated me. I wanted to cry as everything about this precious angel came together. I had been allowed to see her as a child in the spirit. Now I knew why I had been shown her as an adult spirit ready to come to earth. I knew also that while she could not be born to me because of my hysterectomy, she had found another way to become part of my life. And now I knew why I had been compelled to take her as a baby. We were closest of friends forever, eternities of experiences behind us, and eternities ahead. My family has grown since these experiences, and most of them have left home. They have begun their own families and embarked on their own paths of progression. Joe and I still try to help them through painful moments, but we know that we can never live their lives for them and would not want to. We understand that they are heavenly beings like ourselves, here for an earthly experience. We can't swallow up their sorrow, and we can't plan their joy. All we can do is be family. All we can do is love. More experiences have come to me since November 18th of 1973, but I am reluctant to share them here. It took 19 years and countless proddings to get me to share the experiences in this book. Everything has its time. For this book, the time is now. I've wondered from time to time just what my mission would entail, but of course no understanding has come, no answers offered. I have simply been impressed to live within the light of Jesus Christ and to continue to accept His love in my life. By doing this, I suppose, I will be able to do all that He may want of me. We are to love one another. I know that. We are to be kind, to be tolerant, to give generous service. I know that the greater joy will come to us through love than in any other way. I have seen its wonderful, glorious rewards. The details of my experience are important only to the point that they help us to love. All else is an appendage to that. It is simply a matter of following the Savior's message, which He most clearly expressed to me. Above all else, love one another. I will continue to try. So, there's a lot of reasons that this book hits home for me. But I really hope you guys enjoyed it. And please feel free to add any comments. And I do appreciate positive feedback. So thank you so much. And I will read to you another day. Thank you.